G'day, guys, and welcome to episode 37 of the Mindful Men podcast. I'm your host, Simon Rinnie, and today I'm getting mindful about a book review. Yep, I'm getting all nerdy on you and sharing my thoughts on The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Now, a bit of a warning here. I'm going to swear a lot in this episode. I'm going to swear a lot because I don't feel like I can do a book review about not giving a fuck without actually using the word fuck a lot. And this will make sense if you've read the book, or you might read the book after this review. So, to those of you okay with fucks, stay tuned. But for those of you not too keen on the F word, it's okay to skip this episode. Now, I'm not a huge reader. It takes me an age to read a book from cover to cover. Where some people can knock off a book in a day or two, I could literally take months. In fact, it took me about 10 years to read the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit. And I tend to only read just before bed because it helps me to go to sleep. Now, it's a great thing to finish a book. But whenever I do finish a book, I'm left feeling great, like I've accomplished something. But every now and then, I find a book that really gets me excited. These types of books just seem to make sense. They feel easy to read. And they get me flipping through more than one page per night. Then, as I go, I'm taking photos of the quotes that light me up. And The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is one of these books. So why did I pick this book? Well, if I'm being honest, it's because I give way too many fucks in my life. I'm giving fucks about everything from my own health and well-being, work, my family life, dreams for the future, resentment from my past, all the hardships in my life, even why my footy team ended up on the bottom of the ladder for another year. Global warming, share prices, crypto prices, the cost of petrol, this, that, and something else. As I was reading the book, I was even giving fucks about wanting to start my own business. And now that I've finished the book, I'm giving fucks about trying to find clients for my new business. I'm giving so many fucks that I often forget which fucks I should be giving a fuck about. My brain is going in 500 different directions at once, and I get lost in thought patterns. I often feel buried within those thoughts and feel like a whole bunch of self-doubt is coming in. Imposter syndrome is sitting there fueling my worries. It's telling me that I'm not good enough in life, or parenting, or my marriage, or my business. Headaches consume me daily, and my only release is to stop, go for a run, and get into a space of being mindfully present. Now, once I can get into this space, and some days it's really hard, the mountains of fucks swirling in my brain seem to dissipate into only a few. But they don't go away completely, but rather wait a few hours before returning. So as you can probably tell, the main reason I picked up the book was to discover the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Mark Manson has a way with words, and it's not for everyone. Fuck this and fuck that. I guess you could say that the title is an insight into what to expect. But as a bloke, and being an Aussie bloke at that, dropping F-bombs into mid-sentence is quite a normal thing, hence the appeal. As Mark puts it, not giving a fuck does not mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. It's not about not caring or not giving a fuck. It's about redirecting our focus to care or give a fuck about the things that really matter. So, what should we give a fuck about? What are the things that really matter? Mark highlights common answers are like to be happy or have a job that we like. But he also notes that these are easy to want because we all want to feel good. We all want to be happy and have a great job. So he poses these two questions. What pain do you want in your life? And what are you willing to struggle for? When we think about life in this way, we discover things that can still bring us happiness, but require work or struggle or even pain. And by solving problems, accepting struggle, and working through it, we can discover the things that we really do give a fuck about. This is a discovery process, and it's okay to pivot when we discover that what we were giving a fuck about doesn't really matter to us. Herein lies an interesting point, one of giving up. For years, I've dreamt up big dreams, started on their pathway, but never finished them. And for years, I felt like a failure. I felt like I was one of those could have, should have people that are all talk and no action. But as Mark frames it within his dream of being a rock star example, it's in moments like these that we discover that we maybe didn't give a fuck about the thing that we pivoted from, just like Mark being the rock star. And once this happens, there's no use continuing with it because we won't find happiness in the task or the idea or the dream if we've stopped giving a fuck about it. So, pivot away, friends. You're not a failure. You just don't give a fuck, and that's okay. The next thing I liked about this book is a focus on values. I love values based work as it tunes into what makes us tick. When we're giving a fuck about things that are based on good values, we find things like hope and happiness, fulfillment and connection. Mark identifies honesty and innovation, vulnerability, standing up for oneself and others, self respect, charity, humility, and creativity as being good, healthy values. The opposite are values that are destructive, they're uncontrollable, and even superstitious. Mark provides a great example as dominance over others, feeling good all the time, being liked by everyone, and being rich for the sake of it. So, what's the difference between good and bad values? Well, as Mark puts it, good values are achieved internally, they're immediate and controllable, and engage us with the world as it is rather than how we wish it was. On the other hand, bad values rely on external factors, and whilst they can be fun, they lie outside of our control and they can be destructive. So, why do values matter and why should we give a fuck about them? Poor values means we're giving fucks about the things in life that don't matter. It means we're trying to fill a cup that has holes in it, and no matter how much we pour in, the cup just never fills. The next thing that stood out for me was one of not being right, or as Mark puts it, being wrong. For those of you following me across the journey, you will know that OCD, anxiety, and even perfectionism play a big part in my personality. I was chatting recently with a podcast guest about where my perfectionism comes from. And I thought of a bar or a set of standards that I have placed really high above myself in my professional career. So, what did that bar look like? It was the perfect email or report, presentation, or even client interaction. It was accolades and recognition, or even climbing that corporate ladder. To me, this was success. My work was my signature, and I trained my brain to think that perfection, or at least very close to perfection, was the best and only way to do business. Now, did I ever get accolades? No. Did I ever get recognition? Well, sometimes. But I had watched others get it, and I wanted it. For 13 and a half years, I could keep jumping up and touching that bar. Sure, it took a lot of effort and a lot of hiding my OCD. But when I burned out in 2020, I realized that slowly over the years, no matter how high I was jumping, I could no longer reach the lofty standards that I'd set myself. My energy had slipped. I was getting angry. And upon reflection, I was valuing the wrong things and giving fucks where I shouldn't have. Mark entices us to forget certainty, or as I look at it, perfectionism, and embrace doubt. Where there's doubt, there's growth. Doubt promotes change. And if you want to be better, things have to change. This is particularly important for those of us who see it as us against the world. Sure, we can be certain about some things and others not. We can be right and others wrong. But like everything in life, this isn't sustainable. There are millions of ways to look at the world, and our way isn't always the right way, or even the only way. So embracing doubt causes us to reflect inwards and recognize that maybe we're not so certain after all. One of the main points that stuck out to me, and there were many in this book, was the concept around accepting our own fragility. Death and taxes are two certainties in life. No matter how hard we try to ignore them or cheat them or prevent them from happening, they're always going to be there. Mark tells two stories about death. The first is of the death of his friend Josh, and the second is of Mark himself standing on a cliff in South Africa. Both are vivid accounts that spark a reflection about what living life should be. The first point Mark makes here is that by visualizing and accepting death, the other hurdles in life seem easier to manage. Things like addiction, fear, entitlement, accepting responsibility for our own actions. These all seem easier when compared to death. And this is a key point. How many times have we stopped ourselves from doing anything in life because we're worried about rejection or failing or being ridiculed? But when we zoom out and compare this to not actually being here anymore, what does this fear even mean? Well, it means nothing. But what does it mean when we compare this to living? It means everything. It means we keep ourselves in a box. We long for new adventures, new life paths, and new relationships, but we never do anything to realize these dreams. We go on autopilot and struggle to shift gears or even turn the steering wheel. And it all comes back to giving a fuck about the wrong things. We give a fuck about other people's perceptions of us. We give a fuck about money and identity. And in these moments, we're driven by poor values that don't serve us. Like everything Mark mentions in this book, we can turn things around. And this is the second point to his focus on death. As Mark puts it, in the face of inevitability of death, there is no reason to ever give in to one's fear or embarrassment or shame. And by spending the majority of my short life avoiding what was painful and uncomfortable, I had essentially been avoiding being alive at all. The final thing I'll talk about is how great we already are. We read self-help books because we feel like we're broken. And some parts of us might need a bit of tuning up, but that doesn't mean that we're broken. All it means is that we're human. We're not perfect because perfection isn't attainable. Even for me, after 15 years in my previous job, thinking I was being perfect, I was far from it. I accept and acknowledge that, and I'm now focused on growth. Mark adds that when it all boils down, you are already great because in the face of endless confusion and certain death, you continue to choose what to give a fuck about and what not to. Your ability to follow your own path and give a fuck about things in your life, as Mark puts it, already makes you beautiful. It already makes you successful and already makes you loved, even if you don't realize it. So while we might fuck up from time to time, we're not incapable of turning things around. We're already giving fucks where we should. We just might need to tighten the focus to things that we value and to things that can help us grow. I really enjoyed this book, and I wished I picked it up years ago. I've seen it countless of times at the shops, and I've wanted to buy it. And eventually it did make its way into my home. So if you're looking for an easy yet thought-provoking book, read this one next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. And Mark Manson, if you're listening, I hope I didn't fuck up the whole message that you were trying to portray. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Simon Rennie, and until next time, stay mindful. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you like it and leave a comment, and then share it with your mates. Also, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a moment of future episodes to come.